Sorry for the delay, folks.
Sorry about that. Hi. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the Alien vs. Predator panel. My name is Paul Docherty. I'm a filmmaker and film historian, and I will be your eye candy for the panel. It is my great pleasure to welcome James Purple Hampton. I did my due diligence and had a pre-panel conversation with James last week, and it turns out we share something in common. We both used to live in Keene, New Hampshire, of all places, and I didn't know game developers came from Keene, New Hampshire, and I guess we're going to find out how that works. Would you like to tell us your story?
Yes, take it away. It's a small world, right? Keene's a lovely town, by the way. So, my name's James, or Purple, as my friends call me. I worked on Alien as a producer on Alien vs. Predator, and just want to give you a little bit of background about myself, about how I got into the games business at first. So, as he mentioned, we grew up in Keene, New Hampshire. I was 7 years old when Star Wars came out. My mom helped me with my C-3PO costume.
Sorry to interrupt. I do have mouse. I found one.
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Oh,
Thank you so much. That's an amazing job. And so, I like a lot of kids of our generation who were 7 years old in 1977, dressed up as Star Wars characters for Halloween, and it was a kind of a diehard part of our life. By 1978, I had started drawing the entire movie out, and with one of my neighborhood friends, and together we promised that one day we'd grow up and show it to George Lucas. Fast forward into 1990, and I started the 90s off with a bang. My house burned down, and I lost everything I owned. It was really hard, but it taught me a lot of valuable lessons. One being just sort of that even when you're facing the worst time, you can't necessarily know like what tomorrow will bring or where you're going to be 6 months later. So as I sat there in the squad car watching my house burn to the ground, I was wrapped in my Empire Strikes Back blanket that my mom had made me. And not in a million years could I imagine that I would, in 9 months, be starting as a playtester at Lucasfilm Games and become my first job. But,
turn the microphones up a little bit.
Oh, sure, that's me. And so, while shortly after the fire, I started having this recurring dream about heading west in our purple car. So I got a car, painted it purple, headed west. Making a pit stop at the Devil's Tower where Close Encounters was filmed. So, as a diehard science fiction fan, I loved it. And then, by strange luck and emotion as the universe provided, I became a playtester at Lucasfilm. I'm like the nerdy guy in the black T-shirt next to George.
So did you respond to an ad or something?
I responded to a classified ad that they happened to post once. It just simply said, "Do you play computer games?" It's like, why? It didn't have a company name. It just said, "Send your resume to a post office box." And the day I showed up for the interview, I was like, "What's with all the Star Wars posters?" And then they told me where I was, and I was like, "What's happening?" But it really sort of set me on a journey, and I call it, a game term, a leap of faith, right? I had no idea what the future was going to hold, but my dreams were leading me, and I followed them, and it paid out. It paid off for me. So, and so it just has given me the lesson that even when life is at its worst, you can have a better day tomorrow and be on a brighter path that you would never expect to be on.
That's beautiful. What was one of the highlights for you at Lucasfilm?
Let's see. The highlights were definitely working, just getting to know the business and the sort of the insides and outs of how games were made. It sounds great to be able to play video games all day, and it kind of is. But there is a job to it, and then there's a lot of what you learned early on was there's a lot of late nights, weekends, and the first round of games I tested on was getting Monkey Island out the door. And to do it, everyone in the company pitches in. It's like, it's not just the play testers, it's everyone kind of rolls up the sleeves and say, we're coming in over the weekend and testing builds as they come through, because got to get it out for Christmas, right? So,
But it does build the camaraderie, yeah.
yeah. And I then started learning, as a lead playtester, I oversaw the testing of the first Star Wars Nintendo game. And that was developed by Beam Software in Australia. And there's a lot of, the other producers were very busy, so I ended up taking on the sort of responsibility of faxing the bug reports to the programmers in
Nice.
Australia and just sort of getting things in motion. And it really sort of, this got me into the vein of like what game making was all about, and how important it is to, you can't play your game enough before it goes out the door.
That really set you up for the next stage.
Yeah, and that came actually through one of our mutual friends who's in the audience. I worked with her sister at Lucasfilm, but she happened to work at Atari and gave us the heads up about a producer position, which I'm forever very grateful for. And so I moved from being the tester to being a producer. And one of the first games I was assigned to was Alien versus Predator. All right. Now, this is where this kind of gets a bit strange, because Alien vs. Predator was originally a game from Activision for the Super Nintendo, and that's what Atari was supposed to make. But we creatively decided that there was, better things to do with these characters than the game. I mean, this wasn't a great game. We weren't happy with it. We wanted to do more and make a game that was more in vein with being able to play all three sides of the different characters.
So it wasn't 3D for start, right?
It wasn't 3D to start. In fact, our version, the initial version that I picked up on was Alien vs. Predator for the Lynx. The company Images Software in the UK, led by Carl Jeffries, they actually started a design that it got pretty far along to like an early alpha stage, but it wasn't fully playable, but it was meant to be a first-person shooter. You could play a Marine or the Predator side. We added the Alien side with the Jaguar design. But they had made a lot of progress, but the process of how Atari was working, there was a Chicago office Atari that was shut down, and suddenly there was a bunch of projects that were kind of lost. Right? If it wasn't for, again, people like Tom Gillen, who led the QA department, and Tom was saved the Lynx world, because he was the only person who knew where all the ROM files were and where all the games in development were. And we were basically we would be starting from nowhere if we hadn't had Tom's guidance about giving us a place to go.
So you were given the job of producing this. What was the first thing you did?
Well, and this is going to sound kind of more, the first thing I did was, one, just like, I can't believe I'm getting to work with some of my favorite movie characters of all time, right? And then reached out to everyone at the Atari community, and actually the Takichis nicely held, we have movie watch parties with the Laserdisc version with the extended director's cut of Aliens, so that we could all kind of like basically watch the movies together and just, jam with what were the important elements we wanted to see in a game, or what were the type of weapons and strategies that could be used. And really, like, to me, that's the essential part, is getting like what why people loved Aliens, why people loved the Predator movies, and really kind of get into that spirit. And thank you for hosting those parties, because it really made our lives so much easier, right? Like, and gave us a vision.
So at that point, when you came aboard, had any development been done on the Jaguar yet?
It had not. And this is where the two teams actually sort of simultaneously were pitching ideas. So we built off of the image design of it being a kind of first-person perspective, two-sided game. But both we and the folks at Rebellion wanted to add the Alien game so you could play as all three sides, which was kind of unheard of and still kind of is, But who's to say that, the aliens are the bad guys when you're, if you're an alien, the Marines seem pretty awful, right?
So you mentioned Rebellion. Who's Rebellion?
Okay, so let's go. Just Rebellion is a team developer based in Oxford, UK, and they had been working with the becoming a Jaguar developer at the time. So there were like two parallel things going. They were like finishing off the end of the Lynx games while the Jaguar titles were getting started. And so we had kind of like two priorities at the same time.
Right.
But one of them was, well, we were getting introduced to new Jaguar development groups, and Rebellion was one of them. And they also had a similar design. It was like we all sort of pulled together our resources and kind of came up with this vision of what Alien vs. Predator could be.
Excellent.
Let's see. One of the things we loved about the Rebellion group was that they had a fantastic art department and design sense. So instead of doing rendered computer art, they did actually physical painted tiles and photography for the work. So these are like some of the wall tiles that were used. These are the two main artists, Toby and Stewart, Toby Banfield and Stewart. His name escapes me at the moment. But these guys really came up with the version of it. In fact, you can see how they animated everything. They used the actual model kits, the resin model kits that were sold in like hobby stores, but then put armatures in them so they could do the animation for it. And it really gave it this kind of, what I think is a great photorealistic, real distinct look for the game. There's a bit of a story with the Alien Queen. I'll jump if you want to jump into. So part of the Alien Queen, the property of Alien, is developed by that artist H.R. Giger, and he's fantastic work. Again, was a fan growing up in college and everything. But there's weird import customs that when something goes through customs, and for whatever reason we could not get the model of the Alien Queen into the developer in Oxford.
Giger was notorious, wasn't he?
Well, he's notorious for having sort of sexual, questionable material, but it's like, when you've seen the Alien movies, you're like, but the monsters and aliens, right? So this is, again, it's like, when people wonder, what does a producer do, right? Well, a producer does whatever is necessary. And in this case, it was getting the, getting the models into the country for the UK. So I was visiting New England where we grew up. I went to a toy store, which you may not remember, called Mr. Big's Toyland. And they happened to have in stock a copy of the Alien Queen, and I was able to smuggle it into England in my carry-on. Which sounds ridiculous, but they got it done, right? So the artists were able to actually do their animation cycles, and we were able to get it all the way, to the finish line with it. Let's see. Along the way, here's the main AVP programmer is Mike Beaton. You can see he's coding it in the background. And there was a good relationship with the group. We called there's a time difference, but the calling back and forth works out in everyone's favor. The problem was we showed Alien vs. Predator at CES in January of '94. People were like, "Wow, this looks great. When can we play it?" And we were like, "Yeah, we want you to play it." Right? But the original contract, which I wasn't part of negotiating necessarily, had already all the money had been spent, and so the developer was unable to keep paying the programmers. But because we had become sort of friends during the process of building things, they just picked up the phone and said, "Hey, we haven't been paid in like 6 weeks. Can you help us out?" Right? And so,
how much of a game did you have at that point?
So at that point, the game was ready to. It was really, I would call it just more of a technology demo. So you had a simple, random map generator that just randomly would create hallways. They had no Predator game, no Alien game, and a very limited round of weapons available for the Marine game. And it really was a technology demo as more than a game.
Right.
However, with the money being out and the contracts being expired, the developer House of Rebellion, because they had gotten so much press, had a bunch of new contracts that they wanted to move on to, and so they were actually encouraging us to ship it in April of '94.
So,
How did that happen?
It seems weird, but it's like, to Rebellion's credit, they created this fantastic looking, it had great screenshots for the magazines and the press at the time. And that buzz got them like new contracts from other publishers. And with our contract having had run out of money, they just seemed like we wanted to get this out the door and we're done with this. And that's where I was able to change Sam Trammell's mind. So
Right, well, if you want to know what a producer does. What
Yeah.
What did you do?
so Sam Trammell, the president of Atari, it gets to be April, and we're having a conference call with the development director at Rebellion. Rebellion's trying to get us to ship it, and after he says it, I put the conference speaker phone on mute so that we couldn't hear, and Sam's like, "What the heck's going on here?" So I explained that the guys hadn't been paid, and basically came up with the solution, which was, let's pay them directly, get them on a plane, bring them into the Sunnyvale headquarters, and they can hang out with us all summer while we finish the game. Yay.
Working vacation.
A working vacation, right, exactly. Which, to those guys' credits, Mike and Andrew Whitaker, or Jane Whitaker, as he's known now, they were willing to give up their lives and work with us, 24/7 back at Atari HQ. So we didn't keep everybody entirely in prison, so we took them out to the to see the sights every so often in the Bay Area, But that's Mike and Andrew and the rest of the Atari crew, which I see some of here today.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
and so the other part of which ended up coming out of this is that by giving us the time and giving us the extra resources, we were able to actually put the design we wanted in. We could have a Predator game, we could have an Alien game, and have a really well thought out, scripted marine experience. And so this comes at the hands of most of the people that you see in front of you, who originally started as testers, but then became level designers because they were willing to work with the programmers that were now on site all together in Sunnyvale, California.
I mean, once there's the consolidation that really made it work, right?
It really made it work. It's like in game development, one of the truths is as you reach that last, the last leg of the race there, it really helps to bring people in-house and have them sitting next to each other so that you can all stay up till 3 in the testing games together, right? And that's what we did from pretty much May, June, July, and into August of the summer of '94.
So how quickly did it come together?
We worked night and day, literally night and day, and we all kind of came to a head I didn't know the date. It's August 25th, where 20th Century Fox, the people who own the license to those characters of Aliens and Predators, ultimately everything had to be approved by them.
Right.
There was one animation cycle, that Alien Queen, that the licensing manager at 20th Century Fox wanted us to keep changing. He was like, keep changing it, I'll tell you when we get it right. It's like, okay. But the one thing it did by us was it justified us expanding the cartridge size. So suddenly we had all this room to spend on audio. And so people in the Atari audio department, like James Grunke and the team that he led, started creating the sound effects and the sort of atmospheric, creep crawl that we called it, that went there, and we could spend it on the audio. So for a cartridge game, that's like to double your cartridge size is huge, right? It's and again, it was just unheard of in Atari land. Sam Trammell didn't do things like that, But that's what, in this case, I saw him change as a person and grow. And I realized he wanted to make a really quality game and not just push it out the door. He was willing to hold on to it and give it more time and give it more money to get, to really get it right.
Because that's one of the things you said, conceptually he had a view of the way games were made, and then AVP sort of changed that for him.
Right. I mean, in fact, when I got to Atari, one of the things I had to realize was there was I wouldn't say, there just was a misunderstanding, I guess. Sam asked me a couple of times, well, how do they do it at Lucasfilm? And I'm like, well, they had 24 people working all summer. And they're like, well, how did they make the money? They sold lots of games. You know? But he heard it, and he understood that, like, you know, it's better, you know, putting something just out the door that's just gonna be forgotten because it's really not a game
Right.
isn't gonna help anybody. But if we sit on it over the summer, we can still have it out for Christmas and really make it into something. And the testers who became level designers and the audio department and everyone at the Atari group worked integrated with the programmers who were living with us on site, and we all really kind of came together. And that kind of bonding is, you know, you can't really, when you see each other in the halls at 3 a.m. for a week solid, it's like, pretty, you get pretty familiar with each other, right?
No doubt.
In fact, here I'll show you, that's one of the late nights. One of the other advantages of having the Rebellion programmers on site in Sunnyvale is they could work with some of the Jaguar hardware people. So if they had a question or they needed a problem resolved, they didn't have to spend a week solving it themselves. We could actually just walk across the hall and
Right.
talk to the actual hardware team, and they were willing to come in and code with them as needed to kind of just navigate to get things done.
That's great.
Let's see, here's a picture of one of the testers turned level designers, Dan McNamee. I know this was at like 4 in the morning on the day of, we had 1 day left to finish to get the game in front of the people at 20th Century Fox for their final review. The representative, the person who worked at 20th Century Fox, was about to go on a 3-week vacation where if we didn't get it to him beforehand, we would miss Christmas. But Sam, again, to his credit, somehow called in a favor of someone he knew at 20th Century Fox. And so this guy who's getting ready to go on vacation is now meeting me at his office, but at 10 in the morning. And so to get it there, we had to have everything done. We worked through the night. At 6 in the morning, you know, one of my favorite people in the world, Lance Lewis, who's unfortunately no longer with us, pulled up in his Jeep, pulled me into the car, got me into San Jose Airport in time to, you know, get the demo in front of Scott at 20th Century Fox, and we got approved in the last minute. It was just like, oh my gosh.
Just in the nick of time.
And just in the nick of time. It's like, oh man, you know? What a sigh of relief, you know? But it's, you know, games don't come together by any single person, or at least this kind of game doesn't, and it really is based on people's love of what we're making. At Atari, there was Sean Patton, who was a diehard Aliens fan, kind of an early version of a cosplayer. He made his own Colonial Marine suits. This is in fact the photo of the Marine in the heads-up display.
Right.
But he was willing to like put that extra time in and do that, take that extra step and kind of get us there. And his love of aliens and his deep knowledge of how the weapons and the armor and how they looked and should react gameplay-wise, you know, really gave the game that kind of depth that, you know,
Oh, it makes it come
players
alive,
love.
yeah.
Yeah, it was like, we have a love for this, right? You have to love the material you're working on. And we extended that to, we wanted to like make an impact. So at the time, the game Donkey Kong Country was a pretty big hit on the Super Nintendo, and it breathed a bunch of new life. And part of it was they used the look of 3D pre-rendered sprites, so it had that kind of shiny 3D look to it, and it really stood out. Like if you looked at the original the box on it, it really popped on the store shelf. And so I really wanted to have, or you know, our collective group, we wanted to really have it represented. So we wanted a 3D version of it on our site. And again, thank you to the Takichis. They put us in touch with a fantastic 3D artist. This is Andrew Denton, who had been making 3D aliens on the Lightwave and Amiga for a number of years, and which was really cool. So he had one half of it already built as far as the model goes, but he was ready to kind of work with us and take it on. So what was started out as a simple kind of pencil sketch, you know, to sort of like bring it out, became the box art that we know now, which was all rendered in Lightwave 3D on an Amiga.
So you're instrumental in making that happen.
Yeah, and that was just like the push of it, because it really, we wanted it to stand out from how, it's like, this is a new game and a new era of what games could be, and it wasn't just, you know, transitioning from 16-bit to like 64-bit type gaming was, you know, there's a lot at stake at the time, so.
Right.
We're just sort of thankful to be able to, that, again, Atari let us explore resources that were, you know, in our neighborhoods and our friends.
Yeah,
Right?
they gave you a lot of latitude, a lot of trust there.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, you know, people, I think it had a misunderstanding, you know, Sam Dermel put his trust in me, and I value that his decision. I didn't want to let him down, you know.
I mean, you've rewarded him.
To put together, right? It's like
Right.
you know, just to see that his change, that he was willing to, like, you know, put quality and make a great game, or, you know, turn something into, and not just push it out the door. So,
Right.
you know, we should all be glad. Let's see, along the way, some of the materials we came up with, the Atari control, the Jaguar controller, I'm still not a fan. But you gotta admit, the keypad overlays are kind of neat, right? I don't know, we did our best. But it's like, it always reminded me, again, I grew up with playing in television games, so that whole kind of idea was, I was on board with that, right? Let's see, I know you probably can't read it, but this is literally the fax from Fox Interactive, basically telling me that I have to be at the office at 10 a.m. that day, or we're gonna miss Christmas. So,
Thanks.
let's see, just kind of some more background. Along the way, one of the, while I was in England working with our team in Oxford, I also visited Alien War. It was like kind of a live action experience with Steve there, right? This was in London, and so they had this great setup of actual original props from the movie that, you know, you could sort of be around, and you run through this maze while Marines were kind of coming after you. It's pretty cool, you know.
That's awesome. I'd like to, to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. I'd like to wrap this up maybe. I mean, do you have any, what was your lasting takeaway from this whole experience? If you can put it into a couple of sentences, I don't know.
I guess it's like, you know, when I step back, I spent over 23 months making Alien vs. Predator, and, you know, you got to keep, it sounds like a cliche, but it's, you know, you got to keep your eyes on the prize and kind of keep carrying you forward, and be willing to show people that not everything is necessarily as they think it is, in the sense of things that are limitations, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. Well, maybe we can do this. You know, I was very, what I found really useful was, it sounds boring, but reading the details and contracts gave us the kind of wedge to go in to pitch 20th Century Fox and say, we're not gonna do the Super Nintendo version, we wanna do this version, and give them a reason to, which was, at the time, there was references to the Dark Horse Comics characters, which we didn't have the rights for, but it was enough of an excuse for us to go in there and say, hey, we want to make this game. We've all been playing Wolfenstein, you know, and the people at 20th Century Fox, they were like, okay, we'll try it out, right? But you had to kind of also go with, we had to meet, you know, match their level of quality. They're 20th Century Fox, right? They want you to get it right, and they seemed willing to work with us, and they could see that we were excited about what we were working on, and that we really wanted to make it something that we could, you know, really have fun with ourselves and play ourselves, you know.
Yeah, it really seems like you took up on yourself to find opportunities and then really chase it.
Yeah, and that's really what a producer's job is, by, you know, one way or another, to get the, you know, get a game that you love out to the door and into the other players' hands, so they can love it too. So,
congratulations, basically. I would like to open it to the floor if anybody has any questions for James. Yes, sir.
You mentioned Wolfenstein. How about Doom? Was anyone in the office playing Doom?
Oh yeah. I mean, I mentioned Wolfenstein because it was collectively, that's where we started. I mean, we started looking at things in 1992, it was like I mean, the initial push was, took off in 93, but I personally was a Wolfenstein player, so, you know, as you know, a version of Doom was being developed for the Jaguar as well. So we wanted to have some distance, you know, even though there are similarities to how the engines work. We wanted to, we love Doom, but we wanted to be not Doom, if that makes sense, right? We wanted to add more story element and more character and have that deep sense of you're playing this, extended adventure.
Anybody else? Oh, there's lots of questions. All right, I start in the back. You start with the glass. Yep.
Do you know anything about Legions of the Undead, the title that Rebellion was supposed to be working on after Alien vs. Predator?
I just found out about it through Ted Takichi, who was the producer on that title. It's as he let me know, I'll share the story. So remember that contract where the contract had run out of money? There still had to be a way to pay Rebellion, and so the solution that Atari employed a number of times was to start a new project with some money that would be used at the start to kind of finish off the other contract, if that makes any sense. It's like, it sounds kind of fishy, and it kind of is. But if you're getting the games out the door, that's what mattered. I was not assigned to Legion of the Undead, but Ted was. So perhaps during his session he can answer.
There were some more questions. You with in the row in front, right there. You.
I'm curious as to what 20th Century Fox said in the final review, like what their comments were.
Well, his main comment was we had gotten the animation right on the run. Which, I mean, it sounds funny, but like, oh my gosh, we must have submitted an animation cycle at least 12.5 times. And he is like, and without him saying specifically what he wanted changed, he's like, oh, I'll tell you when you get it.
It's the worst no ever.
We must have gone through and paused, freeze frame, each frame, like, how was it? What is he talking about, right? But that's one of those things where we had plan A, animation cycle A, B, and C to present to him, and he went with A. So that was the last final step that we had. But because, again, we had to add that extra animation, he was pretty excited that we were able to add all the audio, because the audio really does bring it all together in terms of casting the atmosphere of how things are.
Absolutely. There were some more questions. You, sir, at the front.
Yeah. Is it true that the game was originally going to have connectivity with the Atari Lynx?
You know, we wished. I think in our fantasy, like, it might have been something that we came up with during our brainstorming session, but there was, like, in some sort of convoluted world, we were like, well, maybe it could be the motion tracker, device on the Lynx that would connect, but there was no actual technology to pair the two hardware devices together. So, not necessarily that there couldn't have been, but it didn't get time or money. So.
Yeah.
It sounded cool, though.
There's a question right there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned you're on the prize. Was there any bug or issue when you developed the game because you want to quit, just give up on it? Like you're just too hard to overcome. I'm not going to make it.
That animation thing really. I'm sorry. Just it's the last thing you want to hear. And before we got the extension of the extra cartridge space, I knew something was missing. It didn't seem like we didn't have the room to spend virtually anything on the audio side of things. And when it really taught me the lesson that audio to me is the third dimension. It's like the a sonic glue that holds the experience together. And if you can do some quality, samples from the movie, the Predator kind of like clicking sounds, and even the voice of the Colonial Marine, or the original Jaguar hardware developer, his wife also worked at Atari, but we heard her walk by and we're like, wait, she has this lovely British sounding voice, and it was like perfect to getting the computer done. But so until we got that extra cart space, it was like a never-ending, kind of like whack-a-mole. Basically, we have to take something out, but then something else has to get put back in, and it was like this constant kind of balancing of, what elements are we going to remove so that we have enough room to actually put in the things we have to put in. But again, thanks to Sam Trammell's, vision to listen to us, he actually went for the, twice the he doubled the cartridge size for us, and in the last month of the development, we were able to put all that audio in, so it really made a difference for us.
I think we've got time. Thank you very much. Yes, so time for 2 more questions. Do we have any takers? You, sir.
Yeah, so you said you were still on a relatively tight timeline for Christmas. Is there anything, looking at the finished product, is there anything you weren't completely happy with or wish you had more time to polish?
I mean, by the time by the time it finally came out, I had spent almost 23 months on it. So, I mean, we had a full list of things we wanted to see in the CD-ROM, or we made a pitch for the Jaguar CD version, which would have given us a much more larger, audio, more animated, more animation, and just we could have done a deeper design, but without that license didn't get carried on into the Jaguar CD. So, unfortunately, we have a wish list of features that we wanted to add that didn't quite make it. But the folks at Rebellion, they resubmitted it, and once you submit something to 20th Century Fox owns it. So they actually took a lot. I recognize a number of designs that came out in the PC version that came out by Rebellion a couple of years later. So,
one more question.
Was there anything that you remember that stood out where, we were going to do this, but now we've added this story and it's become a technical limitation, so we have to take this away from the gaming, or anything like any hardware limitations that you had to overcome?
I mean, the hardware was only really when we were fixed on a 2 meg cart, we had to do a lot of graphic compression for the artwork, and the unfortunate part of that is, like, once you start getting to a certain of crunching down, things get really ugly. It's just like you have this weird trade-off. So you either go with not including that element at all, like it could be an entire set of wall panels that we can't fit in the cartridge space anymore, and you have to kind of make that kind of call. And again, I was just, the saving grace of the project was the continued vision that Sam would listen and say, hey, we want to make this, a great game, so we're going to give you the extra space, and got behind it. So thanks, Sam.
Well, I want to thank you, James, for giving me, certainly, an incredible insight into what it is a producer does. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. And
thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and here are a few more videos for you to check out.